I came here.
Fatal. Frame. Frame. Fatal. Game was, wow. It was, I try to think of good ways to say bad things, and sometimes it's hard. I loved it and hated it. I mean, you got ghosts, spirits, Japan, Japanese, The Ring, Grudge, spooky, static, white noise, creepy, scary-ish. And then there's kind of everything else. I like the world of the game, I like the aesthetic, I like the vibe. Playing it, I hated it. It's clunky, it's janky, it's hard to move around, the mobility sucks. It was confusing, it was very slow. There's a reason why it took me a minute to play this. I finally give it a chance and I was just like super let down. It's funny because every game I have an aspect of that I've never played myself. I always like, hey, I don't like this, I don't like that. But it's nothing you really experience until you actually play the damn thing. Like, oh, I don't like this grapple hook mechanic, I don't like this blocking constantly, I don't like this parkour, I don't like battling ghosts with the camera. It just looks dumb, looks stupid. And I was pretty right. But it's funny because a lot of games recently, a few, you know, when I initially go in, I'm like, oh, I know I'm not gonna like this, fine, whatever. I'll just get over it, do it anyway, give it a chance, because I'm at least interested enough in the game to play it at all. But then, funny enough, it's not even the initial thing that I think of that lets me down the most. It's just playing the game entirely. You know, if battling ghosts with the camera, which is a big, you know, combat gameplay mechanic, obviously. If that was the only issue, it might be a little different, but wow, it was just one thing after another. And granted, it takes a while to learn, to get used to it, and Fatal Frame's been around for a minute now, but this is the first time I played it. But I'm such a simp for almost anything in all Japanese, so that was the only motivator throughout this whole game. Other than just basically completing it. But wow, it was rough. If I didn't actually rage quit at all and get back on, take a break, come back later, whatever, it was something I wanted to do internally inside the entire time. I was just fighting with every ounce of my strength and my willpower and my tenacity, and to just be like, you know what, man, just follow through, get it done. What a trip, though. Like, I don't know, I know this game has like a cult following, and I'm just like, what do you guys see that I don't? What is it to set me apart from most people? Like, okay, fine, but I don't know. I have no words. I have no clue. I mean, hey, we got some waifus out of it. Very pretty, tall, skinny, petite, beautiful, gorgeous girls. Okay. you know, fighting ghosts with cameras for some reason in a traditional feudal Japan looking style era place. But yeah, it's like a completely modern day. I had no idea what was going on like the whole game. They pad the story out so much. You don't even realize what's probably actually going on until about halfway through, if you're lucky. And obviously they're speaking in Japanese, it's not my native tongue. That's part of the issue too. I wasn't really following along as much as I probably could have. But there's a difference between like that and the simple fact that it was just confusing and complex and complicated and rough and gritty and raw, and like the whole game is just such a mind bender. It was really hard to get through. The game itself was just so difficult. This is just like a lot of horror games I've been recently playing lately. Blair Witch, Alien. Like I'm starting to see a pattern here where I'm like, okay, these are games that I never really gave a chance before. I'm giving them that chance now. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I played everything I wanted to. Here we are at kind of these games that I'm like, I'll play it, whatever. But a lot of these games recently, I wish I would have just like played for a day and gave up, because man, coming back is such a hard thing sometimes, because it makes me question and ask myself, like, what is wrong with me? Who would go through this? Why? Wake up, just shake them around and be like, stop it. It's funny too, because I got another Fatal Frame game lined up, and I'm just like, man, it's gonna be more or less about the same exact type of deal where I'm just, I don't know if I'm prepared for that. If and when I do I play that, it's gonna be a while for sure. I'm taking a decent break from that. Like this game alone, dude, I had my fix. I tried it, I played it. One and done. But unfortunately, I just kind of, I mean, I am at that point right now where I'm kind of giving games a try that I would have never even thought about getting like a year ago. And that's kind of just been my latest project lately, is like, you know what, man? I'm interested enough in it. I write it down. I want it. It's on my list. Backlog, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, I finally jump and dive into these games that I know are going to disappoint me. And I'm not even disappointed. I'm just beyond that, like, just petrified. I don't even know. It's just frustrating. Like, if it's a game that kept fighting me the whole time, I was like, dude, you're trying to find stuff, you're waving your flashlight everywhere, it's a pain in the butt. I don't know, it's not... For a first time player of that game, and here's the deal, whenever you play any game, you gotta be expecting some kind of BS. It's gonna happen. If you play enough of a variety and you don't do the research ahead of time, you have a feeling, you just kind of know. These things are very typical, they're very predictable. Like, I can see these things from a mile away. If I watch somebody, for instance, play a game that I'm questioning, it's like, hey, I'll watch it, man, but it's one of those things where I'd rather watch instead of play. It's just easier. And it's like, hey, if it's on, it's on. Cool, whatever, fine. But it's tough when, like, I'm such a broad person of so many, like, I like these things. I like racing, I like fighting, I like shooting, I like military, I like scary stuff, I like Japan, I like a lot of things, too many things. So it really leaves a lot of issues with, like, giving a lot of these games that happen to be put out there into the world, made by all these different studios and people that are so relatable to something that I like. Egypt. You know, magic, all kinds of cool stuff. Skateboarding, music, guitars, drums, art. pretty much everything that's cool that exists. And there's so many games revolved around those things because they are very popular, very trendy, you know, things that have just always kind of been around. Like, hey, here's a game of it, cool. This is the closest and only game we're gonna get like this to exactly what it is that it's trying to be, is this very Japanese ghost heavily related haunted experience. And I just hate that it had to be this, of all things. I hate that I feel like this game could be so much better. Cutscenes were nice.
まどか、なんか思い出せた？うん、ずいぶん前のことだし。私たち5人が映っていたのは確かにこの建物ね。
I mean, yeah, I'm picky. I'm like, I expect a lot. I have a lot of expectation. I imagine and picture everything just being perfect and precise, and you know, in my age, I've seen so many things kind of evolve around me and this and that, which is kind of a silly way to look at things, because it's like, well, that's kind of been happening forever. Things have been drip fed for so long, pertaining to so many different things, inventions and science and healthcare and medicine and technology, blah blah blah. It's just how it's always been. But I don't know, it's like I feel like we are living in one of those times where we're not in this kind of future cyberpunk Blade Runner Ghost in the Shell thing, but we're not, you know, stuck in some caveman thing either. We're in this really weird, odd, strange spot where it's like we imagine these things are kind of work a certain way in our heads, and it just half the time it doesn't. Granted, half the time I think it can, and there's that possibility, and but I look at it as more optional. Like, there's things that are gonna let you down constantly. That's just how things are. So it's like, I can't complain. No one told me to play this, first of all. It was my choice. I wasn't pressured. But I regret it. It's not like, the reason why I play a lot of things is to be like, hey, I can have a conversation about it, I can cover a lot of ground, I can have some variety under my belt, some options. But this isn't even something that I can relate to anybody and be like, hey, you know what, I played that, it was very cool and fun and exciting and cool, whatever. Unfortunately, I have to be like, you know what, I played it and I hated it. I don't really know what else to tell you. And I just find it so unfortunate, because I kind of hate when that happens, because you try to find this commonality with people and some sort of similar understanding and the synergy that's very hard to have with, you know, you got 8 billion people to choose from. And unfortunately, it's like, I feel like the fan base is kind of this nice, tight, you know, very heavily favored sort of like community that's like, you know, Fatal Frame. And I have to be the kind of the bad guy here and be like, I didn't like it. And it's like, hey, I say that, but it's like, you know what, I played it for Japan. I love the country, I love the people, I love the nation, the history, the culture. So I think that helps. I liked what the game represented. I didn't like the game. I didn't like playing it. And it was Koei Tecmo. I'm familiar with Koei Tecmo. I believe they did Neo 1 and 2. I like Neo. Even that game had problems, but... And I know they've done other stuff too, I just can't really think of it right now. But, you know, it's funny because the studio itself, I feel like, is kind of like one of those things where It's not Bandai Namco. I don't know, all the games feel very similar in a way. And that may or may not be a good thing in this case, but I guess you're just kind of taking a risk. I hate it because I love their games, like I really do. They cover a lot of like, they stay true to their formula, and their signature style and series is this whole kind of feudal Japan type thing. And there's a lot of games that might dabble in that a little bit here and there, blah blah blah, all over the place, scattered around. But this studio really focuses on that. I mean, more or less, they probably do other stuff. I haven't really bothered to check, because I kind of just don't care. Like, if I run into a game that's made by them, great. If not, whatever. But, wow. I don't know. Some good parts are, though. I mean, I did get the hang of it after a while, and I got a short refresher recently as well. And I knew what I was doing. I knew my way around. It's a sort of survival horror game. It's a horror game, whatever you want to call it. And, it's like Resident Evil, you know? It does feel good when you kind of know the area and the maps and the mechanics and... But that only goes so far. Like, it's just... For a game to keep pushing me the way that it does, I'm just not really built for it. I'm not really... I don't have that in me to follow through with something like that, and it hurts. You know, mentally, physically, financially, psychologically. This is not a game that's... Like, if you're someone that plays a little bit of everything anyway, it's probably gonna be whatever. Some people just don't care, they don't really think too much about it, they don't second guess it, they just do it. Very impulsive, very... not a second thought. And it's like, hey, it's good to be picky, it's good to, like, this is your valuable time. You spend it wisely. If you're a horror-only gamer, for example, this is gonna be one that you're probably gonna come across. And at that point, you're just gonna kind of have to deal with it, and... as much of a quality game that it is, it doesn't feel much different than... It's expensive, too. Even discounted. It doesn't feel a lot different from... some kind of, like, indie game, you know? It's just... It's got the budget, it's AAA, all these things. But, it's rough. And it's a PS5 next-gen version. There's parts of the game that looks really good, and there's parts of the game that it just looks really old and gritty. I know it's kind of the style, but... I'm not really sure if it's a remaster or what it is, but supposedly the original game came out a while ago. I don't know if it was a Japanese version or some kind of next-gen deal. I don't know. it's all confusing. The packaging, I don't even try to think too much about that, because it kind of is what it is, but I think what killed me the most is that this game is all about masks. I love masks. I have like a bunch of them. There's a bunch more I want to get. I mean, it's tough because it's like, I should really like this game. I should really love it. I should want it, and I mean, to be fair, just because a game's about a mask doesn't really mean like Majora's Mask, Zelda, okay, cool. But that was just that much more that would have helped me kind of get through this game better, and I really had to keep that in mind because it helped me get through all the crap. Gameplay was neat. Yeah. What else is there? I mean, there's like... There's... I don't know. There's one part I was stuck at. There was actually 2 or 3 parts I was stuck at, but one of them I just could not. But this was pretty early into the game, like 10 minutes. Well, probably a lot longer the first time around, but when I recently played a little bit of the beginning again, you know, I got there pretty quick, and this time I knew what to do. But it's always the smallest things, like I overthink things, I underthink, I don't know half the time. But I was trying to take a picture of this door with like a hint to it. And you had to be in like the perfect spot just to do it. It's so stupid. Like, dude, I'm taking a picture of this door. What's the problem here? Like, they don't give you a lot of context or instruction. They tell you, hey, do this thing. That's it. They don't really help you out at all, which is how these kind of... You know, if you're trying to play a scary, horror, bloody game, whatever... These are the drawbacks, you know? You're playing something violent, mature, you're supposed to be an adult, you're supposed to be smart, intuitive, knowledgeable at least up to a point, whatever. Okay, fine. But it was just, you had to be like, kind of this angle and... Oh my god, I don't know. It was just kind of... A lot of it was just dumb. Little things that were like... Sometimes it'd take me like 5 minutes just to find something on the floor, which you'd expect most things to be, if not mid-level, like where you'd normally be flashing your light, or slightly above, or... And it'd have to kind of make sense too. And I was just doing this the whole time. Whew, looking for shit. Everything they did, they made it such a pain in the ass. Like, things could have been so much simpler. If you want to take everything that is this game and just make it better, it really wouldn't be that hard to do. But this is what we get. This is how it is. This was the grand design and the way it was supposed to be and how it's natively done, and I'm just like, ugh. Oh my god, what else? There was this ghost hand that kept trying to grab me, and I just kept like... I couldn't notice it in enough time to prevent it from happening. It's like a split second. It kept snatching all these items away from me that I could have got and had more of an advantage throughout the entirety of the game. But it just kept happening randomly, and but the way things are, everything's very intricate and thought out, I'll give them that. They really drill this stuff into your head. Like, hey, if you want to play this, you are gonna have to make some changes. You're gonna have to adapt. You're gonna have to change. I just don't think I was in it enough to really bother. Like, I just didn't care enough. You know, I respected the game by playing it and completing it, but beyond that, I was like, you know what, man? I grabbed as much stuff as I could have, possibly. The only things I didn't get was things that got stolen from me. Yeah, it's just opening locked up doors. Everything takes like a minute just to do when you're grabbing stuff, reaching out for stuff. The cutscenes everything was very repetitive. You're backtracking. Everything's locked and keys and this. Oh my gosh, it's just, it was a disaster. I mean, it's funny because it's like, hey, if you're just chilling, maybe your room's dark or not dark, whatever, but you're just playing, you know? I will admit that it's a decent time. It's like, hey, I'm this girl doing this thing. After a while, you kind of buy into it. You kind of... Eventually, you just kind of have no other choice but to invest into the fact that this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm here. But I feel like you just get kind of forced into it. Like you're pushed and you're pressured and you're squeezed. It wasn't like, hey, I can breathe and I'm feeling good. And a lot of reading. There was a lot of reading. I know these JRPGs can be pretty brutal with their reading and text and stuff, but my god. It's like, holy crap, man. I read like a whole goddamn book. It's ridiculous. What else was there? The voices. The voices were so freaking quiet, dude. It was so hard to balance the sound effects because, you know, it's very quiet most of the time. Very minimal music ever at all, if anything. The only time it kind of amped up was when you're in combat, which is pretty frequently. But every time they talk, it's like, God, they talk so quiet. And I know they're trying to be this, like, really very low tone, kind of scary, not scary. I get it. But holy crap, dude. Took me a while to get used to the combat, which was my biggest fear at first, but that ended up being the last thing I worried about, because I was just more focused on, like, how the hell am I going to get through this game? I didn't have any problem with the combat. Some of it was bullshit. You know, you get stuck in these little corners. Like, there's this one time I was in, like, something the size of a closet, basically. And, wow. I just kept getting screwed and screwed and screwed. I mean, thankfully the game's pretty good with autosaves if you make it that way and can manually save whatever at certain points, but like, I don't know. It's very punishing. Like, if you die, you die. You may or may not. You just gotta be smart about it. But it was brutal and it was kind of frustrating and angry, but to be fair, it wasn't really anything I got too upset about, actually. I mean, once again, it was the game itself that really ticked me off. It wasn't so much the combat, which was actually kind of surprising. Because usually that's exactly how it is. Blair Witch, for example, there wasn't really much combat. And once again, you know, I got a flashlight, whatever, a camcorder, if not a camera. Alien Isolation, there was a lot of darkness and flashlight stuff. Just, I mean, again, thankfully this game was pretty well lit though. I mean, it's a Japanese game. It's going to be very well optimized and all these things and never really crash or do this or that. To be fair though, a lot of Japanese-based games, like, there's always going to be a drawback, there's going to be a catch. It's like, hey, if you're going to play some of the greatest games on Earth, you know, there's parts that are going to suck, and there's parts that maybe I, as a Westerner, just won't understand, and it doesn't make as much sense to me as... But that's the thing, is I try to put myself in that spot, in that mindset of, like, you know, if I was more like them, how would I perceive this game differently, or how can I adjust to it as they would, or versus me, or have a comparison there, like a nice mix of the two, or whatever. So that's something to always keep in mind as well, is that, you know, these were games originally not designed and built and made for everybody. I mean, obviously it can be done in that way, sure, but I think it really does take a certain person with a certain mindset and a certain personality and character and imagination and creativity to get through something like this, because it's not what I imagine most people can or would be used to. Versus like most other games that people would probably come across otherwise. That's just a thought. That's all, but I don't know. The game's like, I'm over it now, obviously, but like, yeah, it was a trip. Yeah, Fatal Frame. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse.